welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Carrie Oderman with UATV. International law is different in different places, or so it seems. On May 25th, the Hamburg-based International Tribunal for Law of the Sea ordered Russia to release and repatriate all 24 Ukrainian soldiers and 3 naval vessels seized through military force off Crimea's coast 7 months earlier in the so-called Kerch incident. The tribunal's decision represented a success for Ukraine, but Ukrainian soldiers have been behind bars for more than 7 months. Over this time, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, or PACE, has recognized them as prisoners of war. Meanwhile, on the night from June 24th to June 25th, PACE adopted a resolution that ensures the unconditional return of Russia to the Assembly without fulfilling international obligations. Today we have international law expert, associate professor from Taras Shevchenko National University, Zakhar Tropin. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
We have a lot to unpack. And as you could tell from the intro, there's a lot of depth to this story. Could you give our viewers a brief overview of the Kerch Strait incident?
Okay. So, first issue which I would like to mention is that it was long tension between Russian Federation and Ukraine after the annexation of by Russian Federation of Crimea. And it was long tension between Ukraine and Russian Federation in both of Azov Sea and Kerch Strait. And the culmination of this tension, it was events of 26th of November, if I'm not mistaken, 2018. On this incident, it was attempt of Ukrainian naval vessels to make peaceful passage through the Kerch Strait, aiming to sail to Mariupol, to port of Mariupol. There was a refusal to give such peaceful passage, and then unprovoked attack of Russian vessels against Ukrainian vessels. After that, there was a detention of Ukrainian sailors and those ships, and we starting of criminal prosecution within the territory of Russian Federation, accusing them, to my mind, illegally on the violation of the border of Russian Federation. Ukraine treats these events as accident of war, as event of war, with respective demands from Russian Federation to treat of our sailors as prisoners of war.
So based on the Geneva Convention?
Yes, and with the respective application of Geneva Convention. It is obvious that the Russian Federation refuses to do so and treat them as just in line of criminal charges, so just as criminals on the violation of border of Russian Federation. After 4 months, Ukraine started procedure against Russian Federation in accordance with the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Seas. It is general procedure under the Annex 7. It is arbitration. And also, this UNCLOS Convention gives possibility to seek interim measures. And in line of these interim measures, there was a hearings within the International Tribunal of the Law of the Seas. And on 25th of May, there was an order of this tribunal, which actually supports all claims, not even claims, but applications of Ukraine, discharged all issues which were raised by Russian Federation. So it was full support of position of Ukraine.
So it was a big success for Ukraine,
yes,
because they were given their rights in an international court of law. However, has Russia returned the sailors yet?
No. And actually, even after this decision of ITLOS, International Tribunal of the Law of the Seas, I said that there is actually 3 options. First, Russian Federation will comply with this order. Russian Federation manifestly refused to comply with this order. And third option, Russian in let's say, in quiet mode, without direct compliance with this order, but in substance, it will comply with this order. the order itself was of nature that it was to be implemented immediately. 25th of June, it is only the date of report. On this date, there was an obligation of Russian Federation, actually, and also of Ukraine, to report on compliance with the order of International Tribunal of the Law of the Seas. Russian Federation didn't give any report, didn't comply with the on substance. So actually, now we are waiting. We are waiting. I think, and actually not we are waiting, but I think that Russian Federation will act in accordance with this third option. It will be quiet mode of implementation of this order without direct its implementation, on indirect way through the national legislation of Russian Federation. And on this respect, I think that 17th of July is much more interesting date. Why? Because on this day, it will be the end of the decision of Court of Russian Federation within the case of criminal prosecution of our sailors on the interim measures against our sailors. And it will be very interesting to see what will be what would be the next actions of Court of Russian Federation in this situation in 17th of July.
Now, to clarify for our viewers, international law is actually incorporated into the Russian Constitution. However, its importance has continually been weakened the last 20 years. And now Russian domestic law has precedence over international law. Are they using this as a point of argument, not to give the sailors back? What kind of strategies, legal strategies, are they using, the Russians?
Russian Federation is, it is actually official position of Russian Federation that Russian Federation is not obliged to comply with the decision of this of the International Tribunal of the Law of the Seas, at least on the domestic level. Moreover, it is interesting to state that there is a very interesting and very contradicting, if I'm not mistaken with this word, contradicting decision of Constitutional Court of Russian Federation, which gives rights to the which gives right to Russian governmental authorities not to comply with international court decisions if they are in contradiction with Constitution of Russian Federation. To my mind, it is a very sophisticated position, such interpretation of law. But nevertheless, this interpretation is within the legal system of Russian Federation, and Russian Federation, as we see, applies this position when we are talking about our sailors in prison of Russian Federation.
As you know, President Zelensky just did his first visit to European heads of state. He spoke with the President of France and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. After finding out that the PACE had reinstated Russia, he had mentioned on Facebook that he was very disappointed, and he had spoke with both of these heads of state about this. What do you think those conversations looked like?
Oh, it's hard to imagine. But I think that I'm sure that President Zelensky was trying to persuade Angela Merkel and President of France to support position of Ukraine. It's hard for me to say about the reasons of Angela Merkel and President of France concerning the support of this decision, concerning the returning of delegation of Russian Federation to the PACE. It is actually, to my mind, it is losing of support, some kind of support from those states and from a lot of states in PACE. When we are talking about the returning of delegation of Russian Federation. Today, Ukraine made some kind of démarche by leaving PACE, and I think that this situation will continue to...
So this demonstration of them walking out of the assembly, do you think it will help?
At least it is announcing of position. It is very loud announcing of position of Ukraine. It may be Ukraine may lose some possibilities to protect its interest within the peace in future, but I think that it is better to see further steps of Ukraine and further steps of Ukrainian delegation within the peace, and also further steps of Ukraine in Council of Europe. And I think from this it will be much more clear what would be the further reaction on these events.
The only other major European country that voted with Ukraine was the UK. They also have had their differences in international law with Russia. This is obviously trying to build some type of coalition between the two countries that have had similar experiences.
Maybe the matter is that, as I see, United Kingdom was always supporting Ukraine in tension with Russian Federation, and I think that Ukraine receives serious support on these issues. And of course, United Kingdom has a lot of problems in legal sphere or international relations with Russian Federation. As concerning the possibilities to make some kind of support or some kind of coalition, I think that it is possible. For example, to my mind, incident in Salisbury also can be used by Ukraine to make some kind of same line with United Kingdom concerning the struggle with terrorism and financing of terrorism having roots from Russian Federation.
And I think that commonality will carry on. Now, in this next and final question, we're going to get a little bit academic. As someone that teaches at the Faculty of International Law at Taras Shevchenko University, international law is supposed to make states predictable. Russia does not extradite criminals. Russia has been accused of violating the territorial sovereignty of Georgia in 2008, of Ukraine in 2014. What work is being done in your field, international law, to create maybe a meaningful theory that can explain states' behavior or what Russia is doing?
Okay. In this situation, I think that it is better to make a question in another terms, or put question in another way. What would be if there would be no international law? The matter is that the only serious obstacle for Russian Federation now is international law, and respectively, due to international law, yes, with some problems, with non-fulfillment by Russian Federation of international law. But as you may see, Russian Federation is always trying to explain their position, even being in substance grave violation of international law, but at least to explain those violations in compliance with international law.
At least they're using the framework to explain their actions, and they're interpreting it as they choose.
Yes. Yes.
Although their interpretations is usually in the minority.
Yes, but nevertheless, they're trying. So international law is working, and okay, it's not working as we want, but nevertheless, it works. And I think that, to my mind, the way of strengthening of international law in this situation is strengthening of international court institutions. And especially strengthening enforcement issues of enforcement of decisions of international court institutions. Actually, as we see with the situation with the order of International Tribunal of the Law of the Seas.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for coming. That was Zakhar Tropin, Associate Professor at Taras Shevchenko University, speaking with us today about international law. Thank you for watching the program, and stay tuned for more with UATV.